Behavioral Sciences Lecture 9, Social Interactions. In the previous lecture, we started talking about social processes and some definitions regarding it. In this lecture, we're going to go into social interaction, or how things play out in social settings. For starters, the major element of social interaction is status, or the position one holds in society. There are three types of status. The first is the ascribed status, which is involuntarily assigned. These are race, ethnicity, gender, family background, profession, etc. How society aligns you. Achieved status, on the other hand, is something that is voluntarily earned. So, for example, even if you were born into a specific ascribed status, if you were to achieve something greater, that's something that you earn, and a status that you set yourself. Lastly, the master status is the status in which an individual is primarily identified. An example of this would be a physician that teaches Sunday school on Sundays. He is considered a deacon at his respective church, which is a status, but he'd probably consider his primary status to be as a physician. Status leads to a set of social roles. Roles are sets of beliefs, values, and norms that define the expectation of a certain status. So, as a professional in medicine, you will be expected to fulfill a specific role by your peers in a society. A role set are the different roles associated with the status. So, going back to the physician example, you would be expected to hold appointments, consultations, perform medical treatments, keep up with patients, etc. These are things that will be expected of you and a person in your status. A role conflict is when one has difficulty satisfying multiple roles simultaneously. So, going back to our earlier example, this physician that is a deacon at his church, those two roles might conflict at times, causing a lot of stress for that individual. Status and roles lead to the formation of groups, which are made of individuals with similar characteristics and a sense of unity. Often, this includes similar status and similar roles. There are multiple types of groups. There are peer groups, family groups, in-groups, out-groups, and reference groups. Peer groups are, as it sounds, your peers, people associated with you. Family, well, your biological family. In-group, or the group you associate with. Out-group, the group you don't associate with. And the reference group, or the group that you generally put your identity with. The primary group contains the strong emotional bonds. This is largely family and incredibly close friends. Secondary groups are temporary and less strong. So these could be coworkers or classmates that you've had in the past. Gemeinschaft is a sense of unity in a group due to shared characteristics, and Gesellschaft is a group unified by mutual self-interest in achieving a goal. Don't worry too much if you don't understand German. These are just for your own edification. External social structures are also important when it comes to social interaction, as they shape how people interact with one another. A network is an observable pattern of social relationships between individuals or groups. So I'm sure you've all heard of social networks before. This is what it's talking about. An organization is a group of people with a structure and a culture in itself. It's designed to achieve certain goals, and it exists outside of individuals' memberships. Examples of organizations are churches and companies. Now that we've gone into elements of social interaction, how does one present themselves to others in social settings? That's the topic we're going to go into in this next portion. There are social models when it comes to how you present yourself. The basic model states that there are universal emotions across cultures. A lot of research has gone into studying facial expressions and how society dynamics function. There are a lot of similarities between cultures, regardless of geographic location. The social construction model states that emotions are solely based on situational context, which is exactly the opposite of what the basic model states. The basic model infers that there are universal emotions, whereas the social construction model states that the emotions are based on situation. Cultural syndrome. Culture, if we remember from the last lecture, is a shared set of beliefs, norms, values, and behaviors, and it's organized within central themes within a culture. Cultural syndrome refers to the fact that we are more likely to present ourselves in specific ways depending on how our culture has socialized us. Impression management. So we obviously have to, quote, save face, and we want to be perceived by others in a way that we want. That's where impression management comes in. It's the maintenance of a public image. It entails self-disclosure, sharing of factual information, managing appearance, using resources to create a positive image, ingratiation, use of flattery and conformity to win people over, aligning actions, or excusing questionable behavior, and altercasting, imposing an identity onto another person. These are all ways that we manage our impression. Speaking of impression management, let's go into what's called the dramaturgical approach. Just by looking at that word, we can probably infer what it means. Dramaturgical, drama. Basically states that individuals create images of themselves like actors in a play. It's divided into two, quote, stages. The front stage is what the individual displays to others. It's how they wish to be perceived, or their desired image. On the other side of things, there's the backstage, which is who the individual is when they are alone. The individual is free to act outside his desired image, in privacy. By managing these two, an individual will generate a certain self-image, and it's usually a little bit disjointed at times, and how these two images relate to each other often has to do with how the individual views themselves and their self-esteem. There's a little bit on social interaction. Moving forward, we're going to go into some more sociological issues.